10 years ago, I stood in a dark tactical operations center in eastern Afghanistan in front of a wall of screens, squinting at the FMV footage on one of them. The commander, a surfer type the enlisted SEALs described to me as someone they would actually take a bullet for, was burning a hole in the side of my head with his glare. He wanted to know if the figure on the screen could be positively identified as our target so he could approve a kinetic strike. Kara, he asked me for the second time. I reviewed a checklist of the individual's pattern of life in my head. I weighed this against his latest movements, reflected on the screen in real time from the drone. The commander asked me again, is this our guy? In that moment, I had a decision to make. Though the machines I dealt with that day were only semi-autonomous, it is not difficult to imagine a world where AI-driven and fully autonomous systems are programmed to make lethal decisions. In practice, the temptation to cede control to computational systems is stark. It's natural. Tech becomes an easy button. You trust how the bird has been programmed. And so, given these questions and the explosion of GPT-4, AI is finally getting its moment in the sun. Finally. Because the world outside the battle space is now saturated with sensors. These sensors, along with the projected 6 billion people with access to the internet, will generate between 80 and 90 zettabytes of data worldwide by next year. In 5 more years, around 30 billion devices will be connected to the web, creating a prodigious digital exhaust. This digital exhaust consists of the data trail left behind when users rely on connected devices, from wearables that capture running routes, to cameras that double as doorbells, to apps that provide geolocational data. Nearly every facet of the daily life of an individual, wittingly or unwittingly, is logged and captured by the sensors and digital applications in the new information environment. DNA is collected by medical companies, voices are collected by banks, faces are collected by phones, and sleep cycles are collected by rings and watches. As the surveillance infrastructure expands, this connectivity, when used to identify individuals and match them with the data they emit, will make privacy and self-governance that much harder to maintain. And systems that do that matching will be in much higher demand on the commercial side. As one Chinese tech company put it in an ad to Chinese police, people pass and leave a shadow. The phone passes and leaves a number. We build systems built expressly to connect the two. I use those systems in the intelligence community to target al-Qaeda terrorists, but now they've come for all of us. Surveillance tech driven by AI and machine learning is already playing an increasingly significant role in the digital environment. From facial recognition to IoT, emerging tech is fundamentally altering the way nation-states fight wars and police their citizens. It is changing the way individuals and entire populations behave. Our enemies understand this. There is a reason why Putin declared in 2017 that the country who leads in AI will be the ruler of the world. There is a reason why China laid out a plan that same year to lead in the global development of AI by 2030. So what should we as conservatives make of this? How do we conduct ourselves in such a world? Do we still have agency against the authoritarians who mandate all Chinese LLMs integrate core socialist values in their models? Against the big techs that use and exploit your data and show your children that George Washington wasn't white with Google Gemini models? Against the Biden administration, the transhumanists? Is self-governance even possible anymore? I submit that the answer is closer than we think. In pop culture, of course. Being a good millennial and the daughter of a Marine Corps colonel, the 1993 movie Gettysburg loomed large in my imagination as a child. The scene I remember best is the crusty NCO of sorts, Buster Kilrain, and Colonel Joshua Chamberlain under a tree discussing what it means to be human. Chamberlain makes the case that humanity is defined by an ineffable divine spark. He goes on to quote Hamlet, "What a piece of work is man, how infinite in faculties, in form and moving, how express and admirable in action, how like an angel in apprehension, how like a god." Kilrain, reflecting on his native Ireland, admonishes the professor soldier that if man is an angel, he must be a killer angel. We see that tension now. Man at war with himself, man at war with man building machines to compete with man building machines to be better than man. But what about that divine spark? What does it mean to be human and to stay human today? Can a machine ever capture or evince that divine spark? Can a machine possess it? Would we want it to? The answer, quite obviously to the people in this room, I think, is no. But my challenge is to go further, to understand this, and then to make the tech work in the service of something higher, to harness AI in the service of that divine spark, in the service of a life in abundance. For technology is not neutral. We can harness the machine and imbue it with our values. Humans are the ones building the machines, after all. When it comes to tech, we've been in enemy territory for far too long, but we can no longer settle for being behind enemy lines in Silicon Valley. We must build values into AI tools and co-opt the ecosystem. We must be wise as serpents and gentle as doves when it comes to emerging technologies. This means that conservatives must offer our own affirmative vision for AI. What does that look like? It looks like genuine American values. It looks like transparency. It looks like self-governance. It looks like promoting AI explainability so that the behaviors of these computational systems are capable of being audited. Technology should be designed in a way that accounts for the outputs it generates. It looks like committing to open sourcing certain AI models or at least creating an environment permissive to their use. This will be our competitive advantage against foreign adversaries like China, not our Achilles heel. Because dictating the design of products that incorporate US values used by the rest of the world will create a bulwark against Chinese LLMs that integrate those core socialist values in their models. This could also help us cement our version of these technologies as superior, and they are, before China ships and standardizes its own offerings for the rest of the world. We believe it is preferable the world use our models with help from the open source community to strengthen their edge, rather than China. Additionally, since big tech desires to cement their advantages vis-a-vis their less resource competitors in the field of AI by advocating for regulations, licensing that are overly burdensome, open sourcing can thwart this as well. It can also be a hedge against censorship throughout the digital stack. It looks like designing with privacy in mind, enshrining privacy protections and transparency directly into AI products, tailor investments toward encryption, federated models of machine learning, and differential privacy. Some of these approaches consist of machine learning that avoid transferring data from individual devices to central data repositories, making personal data less likely to be exploited by actors with access to that repository. Actors like the federal government, working hand in glove with big tech to target and imprison dissenters from the prevailing leftist orthodoxy. And of course, all of this must be underpinned by a digital Bill of Rights. Congress must legislate and enshrine the ability of families and individuals to process and compute as they see fit. Call it a Digital Homestead Act, or call it what my friend James Poulos does, a Second Amendment for compute. But Congress should ensure that governments and large corporations don't centralize ownership of processing and compute power, as well as cap private computational or processing capacity. It must allow Americans the right to possess and maintain their own GPUs. Of course, all of this must be done with a cognition that it is antithetical to a libertarian view of freedom as license alone. We are not libertarians, we are conservatives, and we believe that freedom exists not for its own sake, but to choose the good. We understand that limited government does not mean no government, and absent enforcement of the law, entities like big tech will continue to erode individual liberties, segment the American citizen, and stunt human flourishing and self-governance. For governments are not the only actors capable of encroaching upon Americans' individual liberties. Private monopolistic corporations will look to exploit our citizens using these AI tools and should be held accountable. These companies are not sacrosanct. Sovereign citizens of the United States do not exist solely to serve the economy or maximize gross domestic product. Pointy line go up at all costs is now a bankrupt philosophy. Approaches to emerging tech should acknowledge this truth and reflect the imperative to protect Americans' natural rights against abuses flowing from the consolidation of power, whether by the government, private corporations, or a combination of the two. A digital Bill of Rights and compute freedom, and a government that protects its citizens and little tech from big tech's AI exploitation is a good start. With these protections in place, we should not cede the AI landscape to talk of killer robots and Terminators and these Google models, but we should promote our own affirmative vision of AI use, always recognizing these core things. Humans are not just bits and bytes and ones and zeros. We are not computational systems to be perfected. We will always have an advantage over the machines because we have souls. So the machines are here, AI is here, and we must make it work in the service of something higher. We are the image bearers of God, after all. And we can bend the machines to our will. Indeed, we should.